Hey guys, it's Coach Theo, and I'm bringing you the Be an Example Devotional number 8. And I've been trying to do things impromptu. This message just came to me. I want to do something different and try to make this video. So let's see how it comes out. We've been talking about my Be Great 8 principles. We're leading up to this. Number 8, be an example. We talked about being confident, being humble, being disciplined, working hard, helping others, being courageous, being inspired. Why? Because you need to live all this out so you're an example to other people because they are watching you. The scripture of the week comes from 1 Timothy 4:12. And it says this, don't let anyone think less of you because you are young. Be an example to all believers in what you say and the way you live your life, your speech, your love, your faith, and your purity. And so Paul writes the letter of Timothy to his mentee, right? Paul is mentoring Timothy, and he writes the letter, the book of Timothy 1 and 2 to Timothy, telling him how to lead by example. And so he's saying, if you're going to lead this church, these are the things you need to do. It's like a manual for Christian living. In 1 Timothy 3, he's telling him, you got to be faithful to your wife. You got to have a good reputation. You can't be a drunkard. You can't be drinking. You can't be a greedy person. You got to be a good steward of God's money. You have to be gentle, peaceful, loving, a faithful man. People need to speak well of you with respect and integrity. So he's challenging Timothy to live it out. Why? Because he doesn't want him to be a hypocrite. He's saying if you're going to tell people to do one thing, you need to do the same thing. And I want to tell you a story real quick that just happened this week in summer camps. We were with our 7 to 10-year-olds, right? And there's about 36 of them. And sometimes you have these cool impromptu moments. We're like transitioning activities. They're sitting on the ground and I'm just telling them a story and asking them questions. And somehow we just get on this conversation where we're talking about being an example. And I'm saying, hey, how many of you have an adult in your life that tells you to be healthy, tells you to eat right, but they don't do it? And half the kids raise their hand. How many of you have a coach, a teacher, a parent that says, hey, you need to work out, you need to get physical, but they don't do it themselves? Again, multiple hands go up. And then I'm like, how many of you have a parent who tells you to get off of technology, but they're on their phone all the time? Guys, you should have seen it. Every kid's hand was going up. They were hooting and hollering. The crowd got crazy. And man, they couldn't wait to tell me how much their parents were on their phones, but yet they're telling their kids to get off of technology. Look, the moral of the story is this. Practice what you preach. Don't say one thing and do another because kids are watching. And then we started talking about what it means to be a hypocrite and why when we live out our faith, it's so important because we don't want to be hypocrites. I break this message down to this. It's really simple. It's not about you, but it starts with you. You need to live out your faith because God said so, because people are watching, especially kids. I love working with kids. I feel like adults are failing. We're failing with our responsibility to be great examples. And I strive to live by these principles because I don't want to just tell them one thing. I want to make sure I'm living it out so they see what it looks like. That's the only way you're ever going to change people. They need to see what it looks like. Do you know why I ran away from church? Because people were going into church on Sunday and acting like everybody else Monday through Saturday. To me, their faith was not powerful because it wasn't changing them. How could you go into church but then walk through the rest of your days acting like everybody else? To me, there's no power in that faith. It wasn't until I met people who lived out their faith that it all started to make sense. And here's the big 3 that I really needed to see. And this is how I break down the Bible in the simplest way. Number 1, when you read the Bible, it's telling you you got to love God with all your heart, with all your might, with all your soul. Number 2, you got to love people. Even your enemies, accept people, forgive people, don't judge people, love them. Man, that is hard. Number 3, you got to make disciples of all nations. You got to love God, you got to love people, you got to make disciples of all nations. If you want to live by example, those are the big 3, but here's what leads them all, and this is what I want to get to right now. If you're still watching, you better follow me. The core identity issue that most of us struggle with is right here. And I just learned this maybe last year, and it changed my life, and I know it's going to change yours. It comes from the book of Ecclesiastes from Solomon, 12:13. He says this, after everything I've discovered in life, you got to understand he was the wisest man on the face of the earth, the most powerful man. Next to Jesus, this guy knew everything. And here's what his conclusion came down to in Ecclesiastes 12:13. Everything I've learned in life, it comes down to this. Fear God, obey his commandments. And this is the core identity issue that we all struggle with. It leads everything when it comes to living a life that's not about you and being a great example. It gives you the motivation to want to do it, because when you fear God, and I'm not talking about like acting like he's going to come in and lay the smack down on you because you're not living a life for him. I'm talking about you don't want to disappoint him. How many of you have a father that you never wanted to disappoint? Man, he could get mad at you and it didn't bother you, but as soon as he said, that just disappoints me, Theo. I'm really disappointed that you. How many of you know that feeling? It hurts. You don't want to disappoint your father. Do you know who your daddy is? You forgot whose you are. And this is the core identity issue. You see my shirt? Worshiping the Lord unashamed in everything you do. Don't fear what other people think about you. Don't fear living your life for God. Don't fear being the oddball, the weirdo, the person that's going against the grain. Fear disappointing God, and that's going to motivate you to want to be a good example in everything that you do. Fear God, obey his commandments, love him with all your might, love people, make disciples of all nations. It's not about you, it starts with you. You need to live your faith out because God said so. People are watching, especially kids. It sounds so simple, but I know that it's not. And you need to start every single day with these thoughts, with these principles embedded, ingrained into your mind. Wake up and say, God, I fear you today, nobody else. I want to live my life for you. I want to be an example. I want all these kids watching to see what it means to live out my faith. I want the people that I haven't even met yet to know what it means to feel your love. I need to be the light because people are lost and confused. You're never going to bring them to Christ if you're a hypocrite. You got to live your faith out Monday through Sunday, 24/7, 365 days a year. Now listen, I want to finish with this. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do because it's by the grace of God that you've been saved. Ephesians 2:8. It's not about your good works. There's no pressure. The motivation comes because Jesus died for you and you want to live your life for him because of what he did for you, because God said so. You want to stop being selfish and start being selfless because God said so, and he sent his one and only son to save your life, and he didn't have to do that, but he loved you so much. That's not pressure, that's motivation, baby. Be an example today, and I'm telling you this, it may just be an absolute game changer for you and everyone in your life.